This was just handed to me by the facilities team, so bear with me. Astropub, you're going to need to redo your lore video on the history of the Zeus.
When the devs tell you to do a lore video, I guess you do a lore video. My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the Astro Historian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be talking about one of the most iconic ships of all spaceflight in the universe of Star Citizen, and its recent rebirth, the RSI Zeus. To understand why the Zeus was so important in the history of the verse, you need to understand the context it was built. In the early 22nd century, quantum travel was still less than a century old, and was the exclusive domain of militaries, government space programs, and large corporations. Atmospheric processors were still brand new, having only been revealed by Roberts Space Industries on April 21st, 2113, and entirely unproven, with Project Renatus being the first scaled test of terraformation on Mars with the assistance of several Earth governments. And on September 13th, 2125, the project was on the brink of success. None of the 4,876 personnel on the planet were wearing pressure suits, and none of the buildings were atmospherically sealed, as Mars was one day away from being labeled officially terraformed. That day, a catastrophic reversal of the atmospheric processors killed everyone on the planet. This would become known as the Mars Tragedy, and lead to a much slower and more painful process of terraformation. With this process, more people were needed to restart the project, and great numbers of transports were required, likely more than were available at the time. This is where the new RSI Astro Development Team stepped in. The ADT was formed to solve this issue by making space travel affordable to more people, developing civilian solutions to the conquest of space. What was likely their first attempt at solving this issue was the first version of the RSI Zeus. During the mid-2130s, they put their first prototypes through a series of test flights and discovered that the hull integrity was a major issue. These issues would culminate on May 23, 2136, when, during a live, globally broadcasted test flight, the hull of the early Zeus ship ripped apart as it left Earth's atmosphere, destroying the ship and killing the test pilot. This disaster put the horrors of spaceflight into stark relief for the entire world to see. That same world that RSI needed to convince to not only buy the Zeus, but help finish Project Renatus. The ADT was desperate to win back the public trust, and reached out to well-known hero of spaceflight, Navy test pilot Michel Sal Celeno. While the lore isn't specific, this would likely be the United States Navy, or possibly the United States Space Force. Sal was famous for being the first person to quantum jump beyond Jupiter. Keep in mind that this was an era with much slower quantum travel, capable of only 1/100th the speed of light, and frequently prone to overheating, with little to no support stations or ships that could help you that far out in the system. She had been pushing the Navy to train a new generation of test pilots to test the latest generation of military starships. She feared that as the civilian market began to rise and expand, the military would need newer and better ships to keep up, and pilots trained to be able to test those better ships. With the support of RSI, she managed to convince the Navy to create the first spaceflight test squadron, known initially by the placeholder title Squadron 999, as this was created outside the structure of the military. This would eventually stick, and as such, is now likely the oldest continuous squadron in human history, becoming part of the UNE, the UPE, and now UEE Navy. In return, the Navy also supplied resources and Celeno's new team of test pilots to help improve the Zeus. They worked closely with the ADT over the year to improve the design, battling with RSI executives over the ship's faulty hull design. Eventually, Sal managed to convince them to entirely overhaul the Zeus, leading to the iconic lifting body design which we know the ship for today. Finally, early on March 19, 2137, Michel Celeno climbed into the pilot seat of the Zeus for the ship's first test flight since the overhaul. Taking off, she flew the new vessel, presumably into space, before touching back down safely at 15:09 Eastern Time. The Zeus would need further testing before it was ready for production, but it seemed the first commercially available ship was finally well on its way to release. The test flight catapulted both the Zeus and Sal into fame, winning back the trust of the public in the future of spaceflight and turning the 999th into legends. Finally, in 2140, the first RSI Zeus 1s were made available to the public. The ship was classified as a short-range explorer, with a RSI Quantum Core 8 quantum drive, thermal shielding, and a crew capacity of 3. It quickly became the standard ship of the people, being priced much more affordably and in larger numbers than other ships of its size and class. The Zeus became the backbone of efforts on Mars and would help lead to the terraforming project's success in 2157. As a result, the Zeus became the standard for all commercial ship designers to match, cementing itself as the progenitor of all modern private spacecraft in the UAE. Simply put, without the Zeus, there would be no Aurora, Mustang, 100i, C8 Pisces, or Reliant series. It is the grandfather of all modern spaceflight. While it isn't clear, there are references of the Zeus line continuing well into the future beyond its initial release. A Zeus was used for experimental testing by RSI known as the C6 and was lost with all hands on Saturn's moon of Iapetus on August 10, 2255, over a century after the first Zeuses were built. There's also a reference to a Zeus 4 spacecraft being purchased by ArcCorp when it was still a deep space exploration company in 2687. It's likely that sometime after 2687, the Zeus line was retired for newer and better ships. Most likely, the start of the Aurora line, whose first line came out in 2659. The 27th century and beyond were times of great growth for the spaceflight industry, and as a result, it seemed like the time of the aging RSI Zeus had finally come to an end. That was until 2953, when RSI revealed a ground-up rework of the original Zeus. Dubbed the Zeus Mark II, this design strove to keep the same shape language while updating the ship to the 30th century standards. The Mark II keeps the same original crew size of 3, but with the RSI's new focus on creating variants over new ships, this ship would get 3 unique configurations. The standard chassis, known as the Zeus Mark II ES, is the spiritual successor to the original Zeus. An explorer equipped with an advanced radar, 32 SCU of cargo space, 2 size 4 gun hardpoints, a bottom turret with 2 size 3 guns, and 2 size 4 missile hardpoints. The Zeus Mark II CL is the hauler variant of the ship, with the same weapons loadout as the ES, but sporting a larger cargo hold of 128 SCU and a tractor beam. It also has 3 beds to support longer travel times. The last variant of the Zeus Mark II is the Zeus Mark II MR. It's the combat and bounty hunter variant. This ship contains the same weapons loadout with the addition of another size 3 remote turret, a quantum dampener, and EMP. It also has a large armory and support for 2 standard prison pods, all while still offering 16 SCU of cargo space. It's hard to tell if the Mark II Zeus will live up to its legendary ancestor, but if there's one team with the skills, passion, and dedication to detail that could do it, it's the RSI Astro Development Team. No matter what, the Zeus will remain one of the most important and famous ships in the Star Citizen universe. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to thank those on screen now for supporting the channel financially. If you want to throw in a few credits, think about becoming a member on YouTube, and if you want a bit more for your contribution, join the Patreon. Patreons get early, ad-free access to all videos, including exclusive early access to my long-running complete History of Star Citizen lore series. Check those out now in the top right if you want to know more about what you're getting. Now, as always, make sure you like the video, subscribe for more content, and I want to hear your thoughts on the RSI Zeus and any other lore topics in the comments below. And as always, remember, Ex Historia ad Astra.